Don't move. Officer Daniel Mercer's voice cut through the cold Virginia night as red and blue lights washed across the empty highway, turning the wet pavement into a restless mirror. Colonel Marcus Bennett sat behind the wheel of his black SUV with both hands raised where they could be clearly seen, his breathing slow, his posture controlled, his eyes fixed on the officer standing several feet away. "I'm not moving," Marcus answered, calm enough that the words almost disappeared beneath the steady hiss of rain against the windshield. But something had already changed in Mercer's expression. The traffic stop had stopped being about a taillight, a lane change, or whatever explanation had brought the patrol car behind Marcus in the first place. Now it was about fear, assumption, and the dangerous certainty of a man who had already decided what kind of person was sitting behind that wheel. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Mercer shouted. Marcus did. "I said don't reach." "I'm not reaching." The contradiction hung between them. Marcus understood it instantly. For more than 20 years, he had been trained to recognize the moment when confusion could become catastrophe. He had stood in rooms where one careless decision could change dozens of lives. He had taught younger soldiers that discipline was not about being fearless. It was about remaining clear when fear entered the room. So Marcus did what training had taught him. He slowed everything down. "Officer, my hands are visible. I'm going to follow your instructions. Tell me exactly what you want me to do." For half a second, only the rain answered. Then a sharp sound broke through the night. Silence followed. Not peaceful silence. The kind that seemed to swallow the entire highway. Marcus remained conscious, his body rigid against the seat, forcing himself to breathe evenly while Mercer stood frozen beneath the flashing lights. Somewhere in the distance, tires whispered across the interstate. Somewhere much closer, a radio crackled with a dispatcher asking for an update. Mercer stared through the open window as though the man in front of him had suddenly become a question he did not know how to answer. He had expected panic, anger, maybe resistance. Instead, Marcus looked directly at him and spoke with the controlled authority of someone accustomed to being heard when everything around him was falling apart. "Call medical assistance." Mercer blinked. Marcus repeated it, quieter this time. "Call medical assistance, officer." What Mercer could not know was that the man sitting inside that SUV had spent 24 years wearing another uniform. He could not know that commanders hundreds of miles away knew Marcus Bennett by name, or that men and women serving under him trusted his judgment when the stakes were far greater than a traffic stop on a rain-soaked Virginia highway. Mercer saw only a black man behind the wheel of an expensive vehicle late at night. He did not see the years of service. He did not see the commendations kept in a drawer instead of displayed on a wall. He did not see the soldiers Marcus had mentored, the family waiting for him at home, or the silver eagle insignia resting inside a garment bag on the back seat. Most importantly, Mercer had no idea that before the sun rose, another set of eyes would examine every second of what had just happened. Every command, every movement, every word. And when they did, the question would no longer be who Marcus Bennett was. The question would be why Officer Daniel Mercer believed he knew who Marcus was before he ever asked. 20 minutes earlier, Marcus Bennett had been driving north through the quiet Virginia suburbs with nothing on his mind more urgent than getting home before dinner went cold. The dashboard clock read 8:17 in the evening, and the steady rain had softened to a fine mist that blurred the glow of streetlights along the highway. His black sport utility vehicle moved at a calm, even pace, just under the posted speed limit. On the passenger seat sat a leather folder filled with routine paperwork from a meeting that had lasted longer than expected. In the back seat, beside a neatly folded garment bag, rested a small blue box wrapped with a silver ribbon. It was for his daughter, Maya, who had turned 16 that week and had made him promise 3 separate times that he would not forget. The family dinner. Marcus smiled when he remembered her last message. His phone, connected through the vehicle speakers, rang before he could reach for it. Rachel Bennett's voice filled the quiet cabin. "You are still coming home tonight, right?" Marcus glanced at the road ahead. "I am 10 minutes away. You said that 15 minutes ago." There was amusement in her voice, not anger. Marcus let out a quiet laugh. "That meeting was not under my command." Rachel knew better than most how rarely her husband complained about work. For Marcus, responsibility had always been something carried quietly. He had spent more than 2 decades in the United States Army, but at home, he was simply the man who forgot where he left his reading glasses and always insisted he could fix things without reading the instructions. Maya is pretending she does not care whether you make it, Rachel said. Which means she absolutely cares. Marcus looked at the blue box reflected faintly in the rearview mirror. Tell her I am bringing proof that I remembered. Now you have raised expectations. That sounds dangerous. Rachel laughed, and for a few seconds the night felt ordinary. Then Marcus noticed the patrol car in his mirror. It had entered the highway several hundred feet behind him and gradually closed the distance. Marcus checked his speed. 47 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. He checked his mirrors, then his lane position. Nothing seemed unusual. The patrol car remained behind him. Rachel was still talking when red and blue lights suddenly began flashing across the rear window. Marcus's expression changed, not with fear, but with attention. Rachel, I have to call you back. Her voice became more serious. Everything all right? Police stop. Probably something simple. Okay, call me when you are moving again. I will. Marcus ended the call, activated his turn signal, and guided the vehicle toward a wide shoulder beneath a row of dark trees. He slowed carefully, stopped several feet from the edge of the travel lane, placed the transmission in park, and turned off the engine. Years of habit made him deliberate. He lowered the window several inches, switched on the interior light, and placed both hands high on the steering wheel where they could be seen. Behind him, the patrol car remained still for several seconds. Rain whispered across the roof. Marcus watched through the side mirror as the driver's door finally opened. Officer Daniel Mercer stepped out, adjusted his duty belt, and stared toward the black sport utility vehicle ahead. Even from a distance, there was something in the way Mercer approached that Marcus recognized immediately. It was not caution alone. It was certainty. Mercer had not reached the window yet, but somehow Marcus already had the uneasy feeling that this officer believed he understood the situation before a single word had been exchanged. Officer Daniel Mercer approached slowly, one hand resting near his belt while the other held a flashlight angled toward the driver's side window. Marcus kept both hands visible on the steering wheel and waited. The beam swept across the dashboard, the passenger seat, the leather folder, then Marcus's face. Mercer stopped beside the window and looked inside without greeting him. License and registration. Marcus nodded once. Yes, officer. My license is in my wallet, left rear pocket. Registration is in the glove compartment. Which would you like me to reach for first? Mercer did not answer immediately. His eyes moved over Marcus again, lingering on the expensive vehicle, the tailored jacket, the watch on his wrist, as though each detail needed an explanation. Why are you telling me all that? Marcus remained still. Because my hands are on the wheel, and I do not want to make any movement you are not expecting. Mercer gave a short, humorless breath. Just get your license. Marcus turned his head slightly. I am going to reach with my left hand toward my back pocket. Keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus stopped before moving. For a moment, neither man spoke. Rain tapped softly against the roof. Officer, I cannot retrieve my license without moving one hand. Mercer leaned closer to the window. Do not get smart with me. Marcus felt the first tightening in his chest. Not fear exactly, but recognition. The rules were changing faster then. He could follow them. He had seen young soldiers make the same mistake under pressure, hearing only the part of an instruction that matched what they already believed. I am not trying to argue, Marcus said. I am asking you to tell me exactly what you want me to do. Mercer straightened. Step out of the vehicle. Marcus looked toward the door handle, then back at Mercer. All right, I will unfasten my seat belt and open the door. Do not reach. Marcus froze again. The silence returned, heavier this time. Mercer shined the flashlight directly into the cabin. His gaze landed on the garment bag in the back seat. What is back there? Clothes. What kind of clothes? A uniform. Mercer frowned. What uniform? Marcus paused. He could have answered with rank and title. He could have ended the mystery in one sentence. But something in Mercer's tone told him that credentials would not solve the problem yet. Work uniform, Marcus said. Mercer glanced toward the leather folder. And that? Documents from work. What kind of work? Marcus kept his voice level. Officer, am I being stopped for a traffic violation? The question changed Mercer's expression. His jaw tightened. I asked the questions. Marcus looked ahead through the windshield. The road stretched dark and empty under the mist, headlights passing occasionally in the distance. He thought about Rachel waiting for his call, About Maya pretending not to care whether he made it home on time, about the small blue box sitting less than 4 feet behind him. None of that existed for Mercer. Not yet. To the officer, Marcus was only the man inside the vehicle, and every calm question seemed to deepen Mercer's suspicion instead of reducing it. "Put your hands higher," Mercer ordered. Marcus raised them. "Now get your license." Marcus did not move. "Officer, I need you to confirm that I may reach for it." Mercer stared at him. "I already told you to get it." Marcus slowly began lowering his left hand. "Stop moving." His hand froze in midair. Mercer stepped back. "What are you doing?" Marcus looked directly at him. "Exactly what you told me to do." And in that instant, Marcus understood the real danger. This was no longer a conversation where compliance guaranteed safety. Every choice had somehow become the wrong one. Marcus kept his left hand suspended above his lap, fingers open, while the rain whispered against the roof, and Officer Daniel Mercer stood several feet away with the posture of a man preparing for something Marcus could not see. "Put both hands back on the wheel," Mercer ordered. Marcus obeyed immediately. "They are on the wheel. Do not move again unless I tell you." "Understood." Mercer stared through the window, breathing harder now, and Marcus realized the officer was no longer reacting to what was happening. He was reacting to what he expected to happen. That difference mattered. Marcus had spent years teaching soldiers that assumptions could become dangerous when stress took over. A person saw what he feared, heard what he expected, and filled the rest with certainty. Marcus could feel that process unfolding in front of him. "Step out of the vehicle," Mercer said again. Marcus looked at the seat belt crossing his chest. "I will need to release the seat belt first." "I said get out." "Yes, officer. I am telling you what movement I have to make before I can do that." Mercer shifted his stance. "Stop talking and do it." Marcus moved his right hand slowly toward the seatbelt latch. "Do not reach." Mercer shouted. Marcus froze. "My hand is moving toward the seatbelt." "Hands up." Marcus raised both hands immediately. His voice remained calm, but the tension underneath it had become impossible to miss. "Officer, I need one clear instruction. You need to stop acting like you are in charge here." Marcus looked at him for a long second. "I am not trying to be in charge. I am trying to follow your directions." A passing car moved through the far lane, its headlights briefly illuminating the interior of Marcus's sport utility vehicle before disappearing into the rain. For that instant, everything inside was visible. The blue birthday box, the garment bag, the leather folder, the empty cup in the center console. Ordinary objects from an ordinary evening. Mercer seemed to notice none of them. His attention stayed fixed on Marcus's hands. "Open the door." From the outside, Marcus said, "If you want me out without reaching, open the door and I will step out." Mercer did not respond. Instead, he moved closer and aimed the flashlight toward the lower part of the driver's seat. "What is down there?" "Nothing dangerous." "That is not what I asked." Marcus glanced down only with his eyes. "My wallet may have slipped beside the seat." Mercer stepped back suddenly. "Do not look down." Marcus faced forward again. The radio on Mercer's shoulder crackled, and a dispatcher's voice asked whether he needed assistance. Mercer touched the microphone but did not answer at once. Marcus listened carefully. "Officer," he said, "you should request another unit." Mercer narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Because this situation is becoming confused." "You think I cannot handle a traffic stop?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "I think another officer would help both of us." That sentence seemed to strike Mercer as an insult. His face hardened. "You people always have an explanation for everything." Marcus went completely still. The words landed differently than the commands had. Until that moment, he had been leaving room for misunderstanding, stress, fatigue, poor communication. But now something colder settled into place. Marcus looked directly at Mercer. "What do you mean by that?" Mercer did not answer. He reached toward his radio, then stopped. Marcus kept his hands high and visible. "Officer, I am asking you to slow this down. Do not tell me what to do. Then tell me exactly what you need me to do." Mercer stared at him, jaw tight, eyes locked on a story that seemed to exist only in his own mind. Then his attention shifted toward Marcus's waist as the seat belt moved slightly against the dark fabric of his jacket. "Do not reach," Mercer shouted. Marcus lifted his hands even higher. "I am not reaching." For one suspended second, the highway seemed to hold its breath. Marcus saw the change in Mercer's face before anything else happened. Fear had taken over. Not fear of something Marcus had done, but fear of something Mercer had convinced himself was about to happen. Marcus spoke one final time, slowly and clearly. "Officer, my hands are visible." A sharp sound broke through the rain. The world went silent. Marcus stayed conscious, forcing himself to breathe evenly as Mercer stood motionless beneath the flashing red and blue lights. Then Marcus looked at him and said with the same measured authority he had carried through every command, every contradiction, every accusation, "Call medical assistance." Now, Marcus heard the dispatch radio before he heard Mercer answer it. The voice from the speaker was calm, procedural, almost painfully ordinary against the tension on the roadside. "Unit 12, status check." Mercer finally reached for the microphone. "Send medical assistance and another unit to my location." His voice had changed. The sharp confidence was gone. Marcus noticed that immediately. He had heard the same change in young officers during military exercises when certainty gave way to consequence. He stayed still, breathing carefully, focusing on the rhythm rather than the fear trying to crowd into his thoughts. "Officer," Marcus said, "do not move anything inside the vehicle." Mercer looked at him. "What?" "Do not touch the wallet, the folder, the garment bag, or anything else. Leave the scene exactly as it is." Mercer stared at him as though the request itself was suspicious. "You need to worry about yourself." Marcus held his gaze. "I am." Within minutes, another patrol car arrived, followed by emergency medical personnel. Sergeant Elena Torres stepped out first. She was a veteran supervisor with 12 years in the department, and the kind of expression that suggested she noticed details before people finished explaining them. Mercer moved toward her quickly. "He would not follow commands," he said. "He kept reaching around, and I thought he was going for something." Torres did not answer. She looked past him toward Marcus, then toward the interior of the vehicle. "Was your body camera running?" she asked. Mercer hesitated. "Yes." That pause was small, but Torres noticed it. She approached the driver's side carefully and spoke to Marcus in a measured voice. "Sir, I am Sergeant Torres. Medical personnel are here. I need you to stay still and let them assist you." Marcus nodded. "Understood." As the medical team began working, Torres noticed a brown leather wallet near the lower edge of the driver's seat. She pointed toward it. "Is that yours?" "Yes." "May I retrieve it for identification?" Marcus looked at her. "Yes. Please do not remove anything else." Torres reached carefully, opened the wallet, and found a Virginia driver's license first. Marcus Bennett, 47 years old. The address matched the registration. Nothing unusual. Then she saw another identification card behind it. Her eyes slowed. She pulled it out halfway, read the information, then looked toward Marcus again. The card carried his photograph, full name, service branch, and rank. Colonel Marcus Bennett, United States Army. Torres went completely still. Mercer noticed. "What is it?" he asked. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she examined the card again as though confirming she had read it correctly. Then her gaze shifted toward the garment bag in the rear seat. Through a narrow opening near the zipper, she could now see part of a dark Army service uniform and the silver eagle insignia associated with the rank of colonel. Mercer stepped closer. "Elena, what did you find?" Torres turned toward him slowly. Whatever professional distance she had maintained a moment earlier was gone. "Daniel," she said quietly, "you need to stop talking." Mercer frowned. "Why?" She looked once more at the identification card in her hand, then at Marcus being prepared for transport, still calm, still giving clear answers, still showing more discipline than anyone else at the scene. Torres lowered her voice. "Because everything you say from this moment forward is going to matter." Mercer's face tightened. "Who is he?" Torres did not answer the question directly. She returned the identification card to the wallet and handed it to another officer for evidence preservation. "Secure the body camera footage. Secure the dash camera footage. Preserve the dispatch audio. Nobody touches the vehicle unless it is documented." Mercer stared at her. This was a traffic stop. Torres finally looked him directly in the eyes. "It is not just a traffic stop anymore." Behind them, the medical team prepared to leave. Marcus turned his head slightly toward Torres. "Sergeant." She stepped closer. "Yes, sir." "Make sure the recordings are preserved." Torres nodded. "They will be." Marcus watched Mercer for one brief moment before the vehicle doors closed. There was no anger in his expression, no threat, only a quiet certainty that seemed to unsettle Mercer more than shouting ever could. As the ambulance pulled away into the rain, Torres remained beside the patrol car with Marcus's identification information in hand. Mercer looked toward the disappearing lights, then back at her. "You still have not told me who he is." Torres waited until the sound of the ambulance faded down the highway. Then she said the two words that changed the entire night. "Colonel Bennett." The words stayed with Daniel Mercer long after the ambulance disappeared into the wet Virginia night. Colonel Bennett. He had expected a name. He had not expected a rank. For the first time since the stop began, Mercer looked toward the black sport utility vehicle as though it belonged to a completely different story than the one he had constructed in his mind. Sergeant Elena Torres did not give him time to recover. "Turn over your body camera," she said. Mercer looked at her. "Right now?" "Right now." "Elena, I already told you what happened. And now the recordings will tell us what happened." Mercer opened his mouth, then stopped. Torres turned toward another officer. "Photograph everything. Preserve the driver's position, the seat belt, the wallet, the garment bag, the dashboard, and the patrol car location. Do not move anything until it is documented." Her voice was calm, but the scene had shifted around her. What had been a roadside stop was becoming a record. Every object mattered. Every second mattered. At the hospital, Marcus Bennett was placed in a private treatment room while staff contacted Rachel. When she arrived, she moved quickly through the hallway, followed by their daughter Maya, who still wore the sweater she had put on for dinner. The small birthday box remained inside Marcus's vehicle miles away. Rachel reached Marcus first. "You called me and said it was probably something simple." Marcus gave her a tired smile. "I was wrong." Maya stood beside the bed, trying to read his expression. Marcus reached for her hand. "I am all right." The words were meant for both of them. Rachel looked at him for a long moment before asking the question she knew mattered. "What happened?" Marcus did not accuse. He did not exaggerate. He described the commands in order, the request for his license, the changing instructions. The moment the conversation stopped feeling like a traffic stop and became something else. Rachel's expression tightened. "Did he know who you were?" Marcus shook his head. "No." "Would it have mattered?" Marcus looked toward the dark hospital window. "That is not the question." Before Rachel could respond, footsteps approached from the hallway. Major Ethan Cole entered with a civilian attorney from the Army Legal Office and another uniformed officer Marcus knew from his command staff. Cole stopped near the doorway, visibly relieved to see Marcus awake. "Sir." Marcus gave him a small nod. "Ethan." Cole's attention moved briefly toward Rachel and Maya, then back to Marcus. "The command has been notified. We are preserving everything we can on our side." Marcus's expression sharpened. No pressure on the department. No calls asking for favors. Cole understood immediately. "Yes, sir. I want the evidence protected. That is all." The attorney stepped closer. "Colonel, the department has already confirmed body camera and patrol vehicle recordings exist." Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second. That mattered more than his rank, more than the phone calls, more than the people now gathering in the hallway. "Good," he said. "Then let the recordings speak." Back at the roadside, Mercer sat alone in the passenger seat of another patrol car while Torres finished documenting the scene. His own camera had been collected. His patrol vehicle had been secured. The authority he had carried so confidently less than an hour earlier now felt strangely distant. He watched Torres approach through the rain and opened the door before she reached him. "How important is he?" Mercer asked. Torres stopped. "That is what you are still thinking about." Mercer frowned. "I am asking because suddenly everyone is treating this like a major incident." Torres looked at him with disbelief. "Daniel, it became a major incident before anyone knew his rank." Mercer looked away. She continued. "His rank is not what you should be worried about. You should be worried about what the camera shows." Mercer said nothing. Torres lowered her voice. "Because if that recording matches what I heard from him at the scene, then the biggest problem tonight is not that you stopped the colonel." She paused. "It is that you may have treated a man differently before you knew anything about him at all." By 11:40 that night, the rain had nearly stopped, but inside the department's internal review room, the air felt heavier than the storm outside. Daniel Mercer sat at one end of a long table with his hands folded in front of him, while Sergeant Elena Torres stood near a monitor with two investigators from Professional Standards. No one spoke casually. No one offered reassurance. On the screen was the beginning of the traffic stop. The timestamp glowed in the corner. Marcus Bennett's sport utility vehicle moved steadily through the lane. The patrol car followed. Then the lights activated. Mercer watched himself approach the driver's side window. His recorded voice filled the room. License and registration. Marcus answered exactly as he had remembered, but the difference was in the tone. Calm, clear, controlled. My license is in my wallet, left rear pocket. Registration is in the glove compartment. Which would you like me to reach for first? Mercer shifted in his chair. One investigator paused the video. At this point, what did you believe the threat was? Mercer looked at the frozen image of Marcus with both hands visible on the steering wheel. I was assessing the driver. For what? Possible noncompliance. The investigator pressed play. The next commands came quickly. Get your license. Keep your hands where I can see them. Step out of the vehicle. Do not reach. Marcus's responses followed each one with the same steady precision. Mercer stared at the screen as though hearing the exchange for the first time. The version in his memory had felt chaotic. The recording did not. It showed one man repeatedly asking for clear instructions and another changing them. Torres said nothing. She did not need to. The room heard the contradiction. Then came the moment when Mercer asked about the garment bag and work documents. Another investigator stopped the footage again. Why did these items increase your suspicion? Mercer hesitated. The situation felt unusual. What specifically was unusual? Mercer looked toward Torres, then back at the table. I cannot explain it now. The investigator nodded once and continued the recording. Then Mercer's own voice came through the speaker. You people always have an explanation for everything. Silence filled the review room. Mercer lowered his eyes. The investigator paused the video. What did you mean by that statement? Mercer said nothing for several seconds. I was frustrated. That does not answer the question. Mercer swallowed. I do not know. The footage continued to the final seconds before the emergency response. Every command was preserved. Every reply was preserved. Every movement could be compared with what Mercer had reported at the scene. When the video ended, nobody spoke immediately. The monitor went dark and reflected Mercer's face back at him. Torres finally broke the silence. This is what I meant when I told you the camera mattered. Mercer leaned back. I thought he was reaching. One investigator opened a folder. We have also reviewed the patrol vehicle recording from a second angle. His hands are visible during the critical sequence. Mercer looked up sharply. Second angle? Yes. Another folder was placed on the table. And there is more. The investigator slid several documents forward. Once this incident triggered a formal review, we examined prior complaints connected to your traffic stops. Mercer's expression changed. Those were closed. They were, the investigator said. That does not mean they disappeared. Torres looked at the papers. 3 names. 3 separate drivers. Similar descriptions of changing commands, unnecessary escalation, and language suggesting assumptions about who belonged where. None of the earlier complaints had resulted in major discipline. One lacked clear video. Another had been classified as insufficient evidence. A third had been resolved internally. Mercer stared at the pages. Why are those being reopened? Because this man is a colonel. The investigator's expression remained flat. They are not being reopened because he is a colonel. They are being reopened because this recording gives us a pattern we did not properly examine before. Across town, Marcus sat upright in his hospital room while Major Ethan Cole summarized the same development. Rachel stood near the window, listening carefully. Marcus did not look relieved. He looked troubled. How many prior complaints? He asked. At least 3 that appear relevant, Cole answered. Marcus was silent. Then he asked the question that had been growing inside him since the roadside. And if there had been no camera tonight? Cole did not answer immediately. Marcus looked down at his hands. If I had been a mechanic coming home from work, or a teacher, or a 19-year-old college student, would those old files still be sitting where someone left them? No one in the room had a comfortable answer. Marcus looked toward the dark window and spoke quietly. Then my rank is not the important part of this story. The important part is how many people never had one. 3 weeks later, Marcus Bennett entered the municipal hearing room without a uniform, without medals, and without anyone announcing his rank. He wore a dark suit, carried no folder, and walked beside Rachel with the same measured calm he had shown on the highway. The room was fuller than he expected. Department officials sat along one side. Members of the public filled several rows behind them. Daniel Mercer was already seated near his attorney, looking smaller somehow without the patrol car, the flashing lights, and the certainty that had once surrounded him. Sergeant Elena Torres sat several seats away, waiting to testify about the scene and the preservation of evidence. When Marcus took his place, the hearing officer asked whether he wished to make a statement. Marcus stood. For a moment, he said nothing. He looked at Mercer, then at the officials responsible for reviewing the case. I have been asked several times whether I want the department to make an example out of Officer Mercer, Marcus began. His voice was low, steady, and impossible to ignore. I do not. A murmur moved through the room, then faded. Marcus continued. I do not want special treatment because I am a colonel. I do not want a different standard because people recognize my rank. I want the same standard applied to everyone. Mercer looked down at the table. Marcus did not raise his voice. The question is not whether I deserve better because I served in the United States Army. The question is whether any citizen should have to present a title, a uniform, a badge, or a list of accomplishments before being treated with patience and basic dignity. The hearing room became completely still. That night, I followed instructions as carefully as I could. The recordings show that. But I keep thinking about the people whose encounters were not recorded clearly. The people whose complaints were closed because there was not enough evidence. The people who may have gone home wondering whether anyone would believe them. One of the investigators shifted in his seat. Marcus glanced toward the documents on the evidence table, the same prior complaints that had been reopened after his case. If my rank is the reason anyone finally looked closely, then we have learned the wrong lesson. He paused. I do not want justice because I am Colonel Marcus Bennett. I want to know what would have happened if I were Marcus Bennett, delivery driver. Marcus Bennett, mechanic. Marcus Bennett, college student. Marcus Bennett, father driving home to his daughter's birthday dinner. Rachel lowered her eyes at the mention of Maya. Mercer finally looked up. For the first time since the hearing began, his expression was not defensive. It was unsettled. Marcus turned toward him. Officer Mercer, I am not asking you to fear consequences. I am asking you to understand what created them. Mercer swallowed. His attorney placed a hand near his notes, but said nothing. Marcus continued. Authority is dangerous when it becomes certainty. The moment you decide who someone is before they speak, you stop responding to a person and start responding to an assumption. The hearing officer later summarized the findings from the recordings, the conflicting commands, the language used during the stop, and the newly reopened complaints. Mercer would remain suspended while the department completed disciplinary proceedings and an independent review examined his earlier encounters. Policy changes were also proposed, including expanded supervisor review of repeated complaints and additional training focused on de-escalation and decision-making under stress. None of it felt like victory to Marcus. When the hearing ended, reporters gathered outside the building, but he walked past most of their questions. One finally called after him. Colonel Bennett, do you feel justice was served? Marcus stopped beneath the courthouse steps. He looked back at the crowd, then toward Mercer emerging through another doorway. Justice is not proving that I was important, Marcus said. Justice is proving that I never needed to be important to deserve fairness. 6 weeks later, Marcus Bennett stood at the front of a training room on a United States Army installation in Virginia, dressed once again in uniform, the silver eagle on his shoulders catching the morning light from the tall windows. The room was filled with younger officers, men and women who had come expecting a discussion about leadership, operational discipline, and command responsibility. Marcus had prepared no dramatic speech. He had never believed leadership required one. Behind him was a simple sentence written across a whiteboard. Authority is responsibility. He turned toward the group. People often misunderstand power, he said. They think power means having the ability to make someone else obey. No one moved. Marcus continued. That is the easiest kind of power. The harder kind is controlling yourself when you are afraid, angry, embarrassed, or certain that you are right. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the ventilation system. Marcus thought about the highway, the flashing lights, the contradictory commands, the moment when assumptions had become stronger than evidence. But he did not tell the officers in front of him to remember his rank. He told them to remember something far simpler. A uniform does not make your judgment perfect. A title does not make your fear accurate. An authority does not excuse you from questioning your own assumptions. After the session ended, Major Ethan Cole caught up with him in the hallway. You know, half that room already knew what happened to you, Cole said. Marcus adjusted the folder beneath his arm. Good. Cole looked surprised. Good. Then maybe they listened differently. Outside, the sky was clear, nothing like the rain that had covered the highway weeks earlier. Marcus walked toward the parking lot where Rachel and Maya were waiting near the same black sport utility vehicle, repaired, cleaned, and returned to the family. Maya leaned against the passenger door holding the blue birthday box that Marcus had finally given her after leaving the hospital. She had kept the ribbon. "You are late again," she called. Marcus checked his watch. 3 minutes. Late is late. Rachel smiled. "She learned that from you." Marcus laughed and opened the driver's door. Several miles away, Daniel Mercer sat in a quiet administrative office and placed his police badge on a desk as part of the department's final disciplinary process. The independent review had confirmed serious failures in judgment during Marcus's stop and identified concerns in several earlier encounters. Mercer would no longer patrol the streets while those findings became part of the permanent record. There was no cheering crowd when he surrendered the badge. No dramatic confrontation. No moment of revenge. Only a small metallic sound as it touched the wooden desk. Sergeant Elena Torres stood nearby as a witness to the process. Mercer looked at the badge for a long time. "I kept thinking I was protecting myself," he said quietly. Torres did not answer immediately. "Maybe you were," she finally said. "The question is what you were protecting yourself from." Mercer looked toward her. She continued, "The man in front of you, or the story you had already written about him?" Mercer had no answer. And perhaps that was where accountability truly began, not with humiliation, but with the moment excuses finally stopped working. That evening, Marcus drove home with Rachel beside him and Maya talking from the back seat about school, friends, and everything that seemed enormously important at 16. Traffic moved steadily beneath the warm Virginia sunset. For Marcus, there was no victory to celebrate. A man's career had changed. Old complaints had been reopened. Policies were being rewritten. But the question that mattered remained larger than any of them. How many people had been judged before they were known? Marcus glanced into the rearview mirror at his daughter, then returned his eyes to the road. One man had worn a uniform and believed authority meant controlling the person in front of him. Another had worn one for more than 20 years and learned that real authority begins with controlling yourself. And in the end, Marcus Bennett's rank was never the reason he deserved dignity. It was only the reason a system finally paid attention long enough to discover that dignity should never have required a rank at all.